hadn't been back to the house since Mum's funeral. Even then, I'd barely stepped inside, just enough to grab the box of important documents, sign the solicitor's forms, and leave again. The air had smelled too still, not stale exactly, just wrong. Like the house had held its breath when she passed. Now I stood on the porch, keys trembling in my hand, wondering if coming back alone was a mistake. The street hadn't changed. Same cracked pavement, same dented streetlight at the corner, still flickering like it always had. And the neighbors' houses were too quiet. The kind of silence you only notice when you're listening for ghosts. I turned the key, the door groaned open, and the smell hit me again. Dust, varnish, and something underneath, something faintly floral. Lily of the valley, Mum's perfume. I swallowed the lump in my throat and stepped inside. The house hadn't been touched. Furniture still in its place, framed photos crooked on the walls. My school portrait, age 8, bowl haircut, forced grin, still sat on the mantel next to Ellie's. Ellie, 9 years old when she died, 30 years ago. She drowned in the lake behind the house. That's what they told me. That's what they always said. She'd wandered out, fallen in, a tragic accident. We were supposed to be watching her, but she just disappeared. I don't remember it happening. That's the part that haunts me. I remember her face, her voice, the little yellow clips she always wore in her hair. But the day she died, nothing. A blank space, like someone wiped the reel clean. I set my bag down in the hallway and told myself it would just be one night. By 9 p.m., I'd unpacked enough to get by. A toothbrush, a change of clothes, a bottle of whiskey I probably didn't need. The house creaked in familiar ways, pipes ticking, floorboards settling. I kept the kitchen light on just to keep the dark corners from crowding in. Sleep didn't come easily. I dozed on the couch, half watching the muted glow of the telly. Somewhere between midnight and God knows when, I heard it, a soft thud from the kitchen. I sat up, heart thumping. Another sound, lighter this time, like feet. Small feet, bare, padding on tile. I told myself it was just the house, just the wind. I stood up, flicked on the hall light, and walked toward the sound. The kitchen was still, fridge humming, faucet dripping once, maybe twice. I turned on the overhead light and nearly dropped the glass in my hand. There, standing in front of the sink, was a little girl, Ellie, wearing the same blue pajamas with the duck print she always wore, hair tied back in uneven pigtails. Same clips, same face, exactly as she'd looked the day before she vanished. She didn't speak, just looked up at me with wide, wet eyes. I blinked. My mouth opened, but no sound came. And then she was gone. Not in a puff of smoke, not with a sound, just gone. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I didn't tell anyone either. What was I supposed to say? Hey, just popped back into my dead mom's house and saw my long dead sister standing by the sink. Nothing weird here. Instead, I drank the rest of the whiskey, sat at the kitchen table with the lights on, waited for daylight like a child scared of the dark, and when morning came, I found something worse. On the kitchen table was a drawing, a sheet of yellowed paper from the drawer beside the fridge, a child's scrawl, crayon, red and black, a picture of our house, stick figures in the front yard, a tall one, me, a smaller one, Ellie, and a third figure scratched out with harsh, angry lines. At the bottom, in barely legible handwriting, he watched me fall. He did nothing. My hands went cold. I didn't draw that. Ellie couldn't have drawn that, unless... I hadn't been back to the house since Mum's funeral. Even then, I'd barely stepped inside, just enough to grab the box of important documents, sign the solicitor's forms, and leave again. The air had smelled too still, not stale exactly, just wrong. Like the house had held its breath when she passed. Now I stood on the porch, keys trembling in my hand, wondering if coming back alone was a mistake. The street hadn't changed. Same cracked pavement, same dented streetlight at the corner, still flickering like it always had. And the neighbors' houses were too quiet. The kind of silence you only notice when you're listening for ghosts. I turned the key, the door groaned open, and the smell hit me again. Dust, varnish, and something underneath, something faintly floral. Lily of the valley, Mum's perfume. I swallowed the lump in my throat and stepped inside. The house hadn't been touched. Furniture still in its place, framed photos crooked on the walls. My school portrait, age 8, bowl haircut, forced grin, still sat on the mantel next to Ellie's. Ellie, 9 years old when she died, 30 years ago. She drowned in the lake behind the house. That's what they told me. That's what they always said. She'd wandered out, fallen in, a tragic accident. We were supposed to be watching her, but she just disappeared. I don't remember it happening. That's the part that haunts me. I remember her face, her voice, the little yellow clips she always wore in her hair. But the day she died, nothing. A blank space, like someone wiped the reel clean. I set my bag down in the hallway and told myself it would just be one night. By 9 p.m., I'd unpacked enough to get by. A toothbrush, a change of clothes, a bottle of whiskey I probably didn't need. The house creaked in familiar ways, pipes ticking, floorboards settling. I kept the kitchen light on just to keep the dark corners from crowding in. Sleep didn't come easily. I dozed on the couch, half watching the muted glow of the telly. Somewhere between midnight and God knows when, I heard it, a soft thud from the kitchen. I sat up, heart thumping. Another sound, lighter this time, like feet. Small feet, bare, padding on tile. I told myself it was just the house, just the wind. I stood up, flicked on the hall light, and walked toward the sound. The kitchen was still, fridge humming, faucet dripping once, maybe twice. I turned on the overhead light and nearly dropped the glass in my hand. There, standing in front of the sink, was a little girl, Ellie, wearing the same blue pajamas with the duck print she always wore, hair tied back in uneven pigtails. Same clips, same face, exactly as she'd looked the day before she vanished. She didn't speak, just looked up at me with wide, wet eyes. I blinked. My mouth opened, but no sound came. And then she was gone. Not in a puff of smoke, not with a sound, just gone. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I didn't tell anyone either. What was I supposed to say? Hey, just popped back into my dead mom's house and saw my long-dead sister standing by the sink. Nothing weird here. Instead, I drank the rest of the whiskey, sat at the kitchen table with the lights on, waited for daylight like a child scared of the dark, and when morning came, I found something worse. On the kitchen table was a drawing, a sheet of yellowed paper from the drawer beside the fridge, a child's scrawl, crayon, red and black, a picture of our house, stick figures in the front yard, a tall one, me, a smaller one, Ellie, and a third figure scratched out with harsh, angry lines. At the bottom, in barely legible handwriting, he watched me fall. He did nothing. My hands went cold. I didn't draw that. Ellie couldn't have drawn that, unless... I stared at the drawing for a long time, long enough for the morning light to stretch across the floor and touch the edges of the page. The words blurred slightly, not because of moisture, but because my hands were shaking. He watched me fall. He did nothing. The stick figures were crude, but there was no mistaking it. The one in the middle, the small one, had a red X over its face, and the tall figure, its eyes were black dots, uneven, slanted downward, sad, angry, guilty. I had no idea what it meant. Or maybe I did and didn't want to admit it. By noon, I'd convinced myself it was a hallucination. Grief, whiskey, stress, the usual suspects. I crumpled the paper, shoved it in the bin, and opened the windows. The air was stale, dusty. Everything smelled faintly of dried flowers and forgotten things. I made coffee, avoided the kitchen mirror, called no one. I wanted to believe the drawing was some old scrap Mum kept, or something Ben, my sister's kid, had drawn during a visit, except Ben hadn't been in this house in over a year. And the handwriting? I recognized it. It looked like Ellie's. That night, I decided to check the attic. I don't know why. Some instinct. Maybe I thought I'd find more drawings. Maybe I just needed to be anywhere but the kitchen. The attic door groaned as I pulled it down. The ladder was coated in dust and spider webs. I climbed up slowly, flashlight in hand. The air was thick and warm, stale in a different way. Time hung heavier up there. boxes, old toys, a rusted pram, stacks of papers yellowed with age. I pushed aside a trunk and found something strange tucked between the wall joists, a shoe. Tiny, child size, faded blue canvas with frayed laces, one of Ellie's. I held it like it might shatter, and then I saw it, carved into the beam beside where the shoe had been. 4 words. She never fell in. Scratched deep, over and over again, like someone had tried to bury it into the wood. I backed down the ladder like it was burning hot. The next morning I found the second drawing. It was taped to the bathroom mirror. Same crayon, same handwriting. A picture of the lake behind the house. Murky blue scribbles, jagged black trees. And in the water, a shape. A girl, arms outstretched. But unlike the first drawing, this one had something else in it. A second figure on the shore, watching, face blank, eyes missing. I left the house, drove until I hit the petrol station outside town, sat there in the car, engine running, heart pounding. I called my Aunt Jean. She answered on the second ring. "Danny," she said, "everything okay?" "I need to ask you something," I said, already knowing she'd hesitate. "About Ellie." Silence. "Jean, did she drown?" Her voice cracked. "What are you talking about?" "Did she drown?" Long pause. Then, "She disappeared. That's not what Mum told me." "Well, your mum was trying to protect you." My chest tightened. "From what?" Jean's voice dropped to a whisper. "From what she saw that day." Jean didn't want to say more on the phone. "Come see me," she said instead. Her voice was quieter now, more serious, like someone else might be listening on her end. "I'll make tea. I'll tell you everything." She lived just outside the village, 20 minutes down winding roads and half-abandoned lanes. As I drove, I tried to rehearse how I'd ask the real questions. Did I see her die? Did Mum lie to me? Why is she here now? When I pulled up to Jean's cottage, she was already at the door. Thin, pale, wrapped in a cardigan despite the summer heat. She looked like someone who hadn't slept properly in years. We sat at her tiny kitchen table, cups of tea between us. For a moment, we just listened to the clock tick. Then she asked, "Have you seen her?" I froze. "You mean Ellie?" Jean nodded slowly. "You have, haven't you?" I couldn't speak. She went on. "She comes back when it's time." "Time for what?" Jean looked down at her hands. Her fingers trembled. "She wants you to know. She's making you remember." I said nothing. "She used to say strange things," Jean continued, "even before that day, about the lake, about the house." I leaned in. "Jean, please, just tell me, what really happened to Ellie?" Her eyes welled up. She didn't fall," she whispered. "She was pushed. I felt like the floor dropped out from under me." "Pushed?" "She was always following you," Jean said. "Worshipped you. You were her shadow. Or maybe she was yours. That day, your mum said she saw you by the water. Ellie behind you. Then, splash." I shook my head. "Number. I don't remember that. You blocked it out." I stood abruptly. "I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't." "She never said you did," John replied gently. "She thought you were in shock. Said you were quiet for days after. Then, nothing. Like it never happened." My knees weakened. John rose slowly and opened a drawer in the sideboard. She pulled out a faded photo. Me and Ellie, sitting by the lake. But someone else was in the photo too. Someone standing in the trees. A third figure. Dark. Unclear. Watching. "Who is that?" I asked. Jean looked pale. "We never knew. Thought it was just a shadow." I stared at the picture, heart racing. "It's in the drawing," I said. "What drawing?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. That night I returned to the house. I thought about driving back to the city, calling a priest, burning the place down. Instead, I stood in the kitchen with the lights off, waiting. She came just after midnight. No sound, no footsteps. One moment the room was empty. The next, Ellie standing by the sink. Same blue pajamas, same yellow clips, same look in her eyes. Sad, but something else. Like she knew something I didn't. "I don't remember," I said aloud. "I want to," I added, "but I can't." She turned her head slowly, looking at the hallway mirror. I followed her gaze, and when I turned back, she was gone. But in her place, something else had appeared on the counter, a third drawing. This time, it wasn't of the lake. It was of me, older, present day, sitting at the table, and behind me, a figure in the shadows. Long limbs, hollow eyes, no face, and written in tiny, careful letters at the top, "He's still in the house." I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the drawing, turning it over, tracing the lines. The faceless figure behind me, thin, impossibly tall, crouched like he belonged in the dark. He's still in the house. It didn't say who. It didn't say what he wanted, only that he was here, still. By sunrise, I'd made a decision. I was going to the lake. I hadn't been since Ellie died. Not really. I avoided it for decades, even during Mum's last months. But now I couldn't stay away. The air outside was damp and heavy. The morning mist clung low to the grass like breath on glass. The backyard was quiet, too quiet, like nature was waiting for something. The path to the lake was still there, just overgrown. Branches scratched at my arms as I pushed through. I remembered walking this trail as a kid. Ellie behind me, always a few steps back. Sometimes I'd race her. Sometimes she'd cry when I won. And then, one day, she never followed. The lake was smaller than I remembered, still, muddy, edges blurred by reeds and roots. I stood at the edge and waited for some emotion to hit me, guilt, grief, dread. Instead, I felt watched. I scanned the trees, nothing, but that didn't mean I was alone. I walked the shoreline slowly, eyes scanning for something, anything, a memory, a sign. Then, halfway around the bend, I saw it. A small patch of earth near the water, disturbed, the grass flattened, like someone had been kneeling there. I stepped closer. That's when I saw the footprints, small, bare, leading from the woods to the edge of the lake, and beside them, larger prints, deep ones, pressed hard into the soil. Not mine, not Ellie's, something else. Back at the house, I found a fourth drawing, taped to my bedroom mirror this time. The scene was indoors, a hallway drawn from a child's eye view, a door at the end, slightly open, and inside the door, a shadow, that same long, faceless figure, arms too long, fingers like branches. This time, no caption, just a red circle drawn around the doorframe. I searched the house top to bottom, the basement, the attic, even behind the closets, nothing, until I found the crawl space, tucked behind the old laundry room. I remembered it vaguely, a place we used to store Christmas decorations and broken toys. The door was stiff, took all my weight to pry open. Inside, darkness, cobwebs, dust so thick it moved like smoke when I breathed. And in the corner, a box, old, wooden, locked, carved into the top, barely visible, was one word: Ellie. I dragged it out, heart pounding. The lock was rusted, one hard pull and it snapped. Inside were her things, drawings, a stuffed rabbit missing an ear, a bracelet I made her when I was 7, and at the bottom, a cassette tape, unlabeled. I took it to the old stereo in the living room, slotted it in, pressed play, static. Then a voice, a child's. "Danny," she whispered. I froze, then louder. "Danny, he's here again." Heavy breathing, a pause. "He told me not to tell, but I'm scared." Click, tape ended. I sat there, hands shaking, pulse roaring in my ears. That wasn't a memory. That was a message, left for me, hidden in the one place no one would look. And whoever he wasn't finished. I played the tape again. Not because I thought it would change, but because I needed to hear her voice. Just once more. It was unmistakable. Soft, high-pitched, but trembling. She'd been scared, terrified even. And worse, she hadn't been talking to someone. She was talking to me. A message sealed in a box no one was ever supposed to open, buried in dust. Behind a door I hadn't touched since I was a kid. He told me not to tell. Who was he? I tried to remember, but every memory of that summer came up foggy, disconnected. Just flashes. Ellie laughing, Mum arguing with someone late at night, a shadow moving outside my window. I needed answers. The next morning, I went to the records office in town. They didn't keep much from that long ago, but I had a name now, the name written on the box. I asked for anything they had on Ellie's case. The woman behind the counter gave me a long, cautious look, then left for nearly 30 minutes. When she came back, she handed me a thin folder with a yellow sticky note on the front. Unreleased, no public copy. Inside, a police report, barely 2 pages, no photos, no autopsy, just a few handwritten notes from the original officer. Child found near Westlake Bank. No signs of struggle. Case closed, accidental drowning. But at the bottom, scribbled hastily in red ink, witness report retracted, mother uncooperative. What witness? And why hadn't Mom told me any of this? I went back to Jean's, stormed through her front door without knocking. You said Mom saw her fall, I snapped. But that report says Mom withdrew her statement. Why? John looked like she'd aged 10 years since I saw her last. She didn't even flinch, just poured herself a drink with shaking hands. She didn't lie, she said softly. She changed her mind. What does that mean? It means she was scared. I leaned across the table. Scared of who? Jean met my eyes for the first time. Not who. What? She told me about the weeks before Ellie died, the dreams Mom had, the whispers in the house, the way Ellie had started talking to someone who wasn't there. She called him the Watcher, Jean said he lived in the dark parts of the house, under the stairs, behind doors that never opened. I felt sick. She said he told her things, Jean went on, things about us, things no one could know. I thought of the drawings, the tape, the figure in the photos. What did Mom see that day? I asked. Jean hesitated, then she saw him by the lake. Back at the house, I didn't turn on the lights. I sat in the dark, listening, waiting. I wanted him to come. I needed to see for myself. And around 2 a.m., I did. Not clearly, not fully, but in the hallway mirror, just for a second. A tall, faceless shadow stood behind me, watching. When I turned, nothing. But the next morning, the 6th drawing was waiting for me. This one was different. It showed me sleeping. And at the bottom, Ellie had written, "He's closer now." I didn't leave the house that day. I couldn't. Something had shifted. The air felt different, heavy, tight, like the house itself was pressing inward. I kept the 6th drawing with me, folded in my pocket. He's closer now. I didn't know what it meant exactly. Was he following me, or had he always been here, just waiting for me to open the right door? I started hearing things, footsteps above me, even though I was alone, whispers from behind walls that hadn't made a sound in 30 years. And once, around 3 a.m., a low, rhythmic knocking coming from inside the mirror. I didn't sleep. Instead, I walked the house with a flashlight and a kitchen knife I knew would be useless. Every time I looked over my shoulder, I expected to see him, but I didn't, not yet. On the 3rd night, I woke up on the living room couch to the sound of a music box. Faint, tinny, a lullaby I hadn't heard since childhood. I followed it into the hallway, and there, sitting in the middle of the floor, was Ellie's stuffed rabbit, the one from the box. Only now, it was clean, brand new, no dust, no missing ear, and the music was coming from inside it. I picked it up carefully, turned it over, no opening. Still, the song played, until I reached the kitchen. That's when it stopped. Suddenly, like someone had let go of the crank. The next morning, I found the 7th drawing taped to the inside of the fridge. It showed 2 stick figures this time, one small, one tall, holding hands. Behind them, towering in black, I was the faceless figure again. Only this time, it had eyes, dozens of them, scattered across its body, all of them open. At the bottom, Ellie had written, "You weren't supposed to forget." I sat in the hallway and cried. I don't know how long for. Long enough that the light changed. Long enough that shadows started returning to the corners of the room. I pulled out all the drawings, laid them out on the floor like puzzle pieces. Each one was a memory. The lake, the hallway, the shadow, and always me, watching or forgetting or looking the other way. It hit me around dusk, the one place I hadn't checked. Mum's old sewing room. The door had been stuck shut for years, warped from humidity. I'd barely touched it since coming back. But now I walked straight there. Pushed once, it didn't budge. Twice, nothing. Then I slammed my shoulder into it. The wood groaned and splintered. The room smelled like cedar and mothballs. Dust danced in the last light of day. There was nothing unusual until I looked down and saw the chalk circle, a perfect ring, drawn carefully around the perimeter of the room, and inside, scratched into the floorboards, were markings, symbols, shapes I didn't understand, old, deep, like they'd been carved decades ago. In the center of the circle sat a small wooden box, different from the one in the crawl space. This one was darker, almost wet. I picked it up, cold, heavier than it looked. There was no lock, no latch, just a lid. I opened it slowly. Inside, a tooth, small, yellowed, cracked. Next to it, a folded note. I unfolded it with trembling hands. One word, written in Ellie's childish handwriting. Remember. The lights flickered. All at once, every bulb in the house went out, and in the reflection of the sewing room window, he was standing behind me. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. In the reflection, he stood just behind my left shoulder, too tall to be human, thin, wrong. His limbs bent at unnatural angles, as if he'd been folded into a shape no body should take. And those eyes, dozens of them, blister-like, sprouting from his shoulders, neck, hands, each one watching me independently, blinking slowly. I gripped the small wooden box tighter. Remember, that was what she wanted, what he didn't. The moment I looked away from the reflection, he vanished, not gone, just hidden again. I backed out of the room slowly, still holding the box. The lights stayed off, but I didn't bother with the fuse box. Whatever was in the house now, electricity wouldn't stop it. I returned to the kitchen, sat at the table, lit a candle. Then, for the first time in my life, I let myself truly try to remember. Not flashes, not fragments, but the truth. That day by the lake, Mum had been in the garden, Jean had gone into town, and Ellie had been following me, as always. I remembered throwing stones, skipping them across the water, telling her she couldn't do it right. Laughing when she slipped in the mud. She got angry, told me she had a secret, said she knew something about the man who watched from the trees. I didn't believe her. I told her to stop lying. She pointed, said, "He's there right now." I looked, but saw nothing. When I turned back, Ellie was in the water. She wasn't screaming, just staring up at me, confused, afraid. And I froze. I could have reached her. The water wasn't deep. I could have pulled her out, but I didn't. I watched, paralyzed, not because I was scared of the lake, but because I saw him, standing in the trees, watching both of us, and somehow I knew if I moved, he'd take me instead. So I stood still, and she sank. When I came to, I was curled up on the kitchen floor. The box had fallen open beside me. The tooth was gone. In its place was the 8th drawing, a single figure, not Ellie, not me, him, fully drawn now, his eyes all open, his mouth black and gaping, open wide, swallowing a stick figure whole. And below it, Ellie's handwriting again. You watched, now it's your turn. I stood, grabbed the candle, and headed for the attic. I didn't know why, but I could feel it pulling me, like gravity, like fate. The air got colder with each step. The house groaned, and as I climbed the ladder, I saw something new. The attic floor, once empty, now covered in drawings, hundreds of them, taped to every beam, stacked against every wall, all of them, me, watching, hiding, running, and him, growing larger in each one. In the center of the attic, something moved, slow, heavy. I raised the candle and saw her, Ellie, not as a child, but older, the age she would have been now, hair still tied in those yellow clips, eyes filled with sadness and something else. Resolve. You're ready now, she whispered. Ready for what? I asked. To remember the last part. Ellie stepped closer. The candle in my hand flickered but didn't go out. Her eyes searched mine, not accusing, not angry, just tired. "You left me," she said, software matter of fact. "I was scared," I whispered. "I know." The wind howled outside. The attic creaked, as if groaning beneath a weight it had carried too long. "He told me you'd forget," she said, "but I didn't want you to." I stepped forward, fighting the urge to reach out. "Is he still here?" Ellie nodded once. "He never left." The candlelight dimmed. The air turned frigid, and from behind her the shadows began to move. Not fast, not suddenly, but deliberately, like something ancient waking up. Then he emerged, not from the wall, not from the floor, but from everywhere. The darkness peeled itself into his shape, tall, skeletal, faceless, but now fully real. Not a shadow, not a dream. Real. And he was smiling, not with a mouth, he had none, but with his eyes, all of them, watching me. Ellie stepped between us. "He only has power over secrets," she said. "Over silence, over forgetting." My heart thudded. "So what do I do?" "Speak it," she said. "Say what happened." I watched you drown." Louder. "I let you die." Her form flickered. The drawings on the attic walls rustled violently as if a wind had swept through them. "I saw him," I continued, my voice trembling. "I was afraid, and I didn't help you. I ran." The air cracked. The thing behind her shrieked, not with sound, but with pressure. Like my ears were being squeezed from the inside. The candle went out. Darkness swallowed us whole. I dropped to my knees, choking on air that felt thick as oil. Then a glow, faint, blue, coming from Ellie. She held the box now, the one from the crawl space. Only it wasn't empty anymore. It was full of light. "I kept it for you," she said. "All the parts you wouldn't hold." I reached for it, and as my fingers touched the rim, he lunged, but he couldn't cross the circle. The same one I'd found in the sewing room was here too, carved deep into the attic floor. His body slammed against it like a pane of glass. He screamed again, a shrill, wordless noise that twisted in my spine. Ellie didn't flinch. "You can go now," she told me. "What about you?" She smiled for the first time. "I've always been here." She stepped back into the glow, into the drawings, into the memory, and then she was gone. I woke up on the attic floor at dawn. The candle was burnt out beside me, the drawings were ash, and the box empty. But I remembered everything, every detail, every sound, every reason I'd been afraid. I buried the box at the lake that afternoon, not because I thought it held him anymore, but because it was time. I didn't need to keep carrying her secrets, or mine. Back at the house, I stood in the hallway one last time, looked in the mirror. No shadow, no watcher, just me, older, sadder, but finally whole.